What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And this one, I'm going to break down what's going on with Tesla, SPY, Nvda, and the QQQ, and many tickers out there. We'll talk about what pieces of data are coming out for tomorrow that will affect the markets, and what's going on with the Fed as they made some very important announcements during the FOMC minutes that were just reported today. Before I break anything down about what the Fed just said, what's going on with all these different stocks, what you should be watching for, I do have to mention a couple of things before starting. Firstly, I'm not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button if you want to see more videos like this. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. And finally, don't forget about the Webull link. The offer ends very soon. If you deposit any amount of money, you are guaranteed up to 12 free stocks. Anyways, let's talk about the market, what just happened for today. Tesla's up about 0.95%, holding up quite nicely. But there were instances today where Tesla ended up coming down, turning kind of red, but it managed to get bought up at the very end, especially because of some bullish news that came out involving VW. But why did Tesla see like some moments where it ended up dropping and turning red? Same thing with Aapl. That also happened to Aapl. It actually closed red despite that. And same thing with SPY. We saw SPY come down during many instances today. It came all the way down to like the 442 support. And overall, it closed a little bit red, but it tried to hold up near the very end of the day. It wasn't really that bad. But the question is, why was there so much volatility like this? Why was the market kind of trading like this? And the answer is because of what was just announced by the Fed. And it wasn't really that impactful for the markets. It didn't really cause the market to crash or anything. It just caused a small, like, little drop. But overall, the market's still holding up quite nicely and has lots of potential moving forward. Now, what happened today? What happened with the Fed? Let's first talk about these dates. So today we had the FOMC minutes at 2 o'clock p.m. That's what caused more volatility. But going into Thursday, which is going to be tomorrow, we have some more data coming out. We have the imports and exports data coming out at about 8:30 a.m. Eastern time, 1 hour before the market opens. At the same time, we have more things coming out involving initial jobless claims. This is going to be one of the biggest pieces of data for tomorrow, so watch that very carefully. This is going to be for the first week of July. So watch this super carefully. The market is going to react to this, in my opinion. But then after that, we have another Fed speaker. We have Logan from the Fed speaking. Then we have the PMI report coming out 15 minutes after the market opens at 9:45 a.m. Eastern time. We have the PMI report, which is going to give us a good gauge on how the economy is doing on the services side. Then we have the PMI report for the services on the ISM sector. And then at about 10 o'clock a.m., 30 minutes after the market opens, we have the JOLTS data coming out. And this is going to be even more data involving like unemployment, how we're doing when it comes to job quits, and so on and so forth. So basically, all this data is dropping 1 hour before the market opens, 15 minutes after the market open, 15 minutes after market open, excuse me, guys, and then 30 minutes after open. All this data is going to be dropping. However this data looks is going to affect the market, at least to some degree. And so far, if you're looking at the jobs numbers, we are seeing an increasing unemployment rate, but the jobs sector is still showing some strength in many of these smaller little sectors and sections within it. And so far, it's not really looking that bad. So the market is likely going to just have a pretty decent response. It's likely not going to like tank very, very hard, in my opinion. I also want to add that tomorrow after the market closes, we have the only like major earnings for the week, and that's going to be Levi's earnings. So watch that very carefully if you are interested. And besides that, now let's just talk about the Fed quickly, then the stocks. So for the Fed, there's an increased probability of the Fed giving us a 25 basis point rate hike during the next meeting on July 26th. The market is now prepared for this, and the market is expecting this, which is still a good sign for us because the Fed is not going to instantly give us like a 50 or a like 75 basis point rate hike instantly. They're not going to do that, most likely based off what Powell said. They're going to keep it very, very small and minuscule at this point because they're going to react more to data, and they want to keep it very, very concise. Powell also mentioned previously that there's going to be a lot of work to be done. He mentioned that this is likely going to be a skip, and many of these other Fed members have said the same thing. So there was news coming out about how the market cooled off, but you can see it right here. The Dow slid 100 points as traders assessed the Fed's latest comments during the FOMC minutes. And these Fed officials came out and they said that monetary policy is just driving investors. They mentioned that the Fed has to maintain an aggressive stance. They still have to be hawkish because the economy is still a little bit harder than what they expected it to be. And there's still a lot of work to be done to fight inflation. They mentioned that inflation is still too hot. For that reason, the fight against it is not really meeting their expectations. They expected the economy to cool down a lot more. And they also talked about how core inflation is still too hot. They repeated a lot of things. But one thing that was different was Many of these Fed officials are saying that a recession is on the horizon. A mild recession is very possible and quite probable now. And many of them have a very different stance compared to where we saw them, not too long ago. So it's just worth noting. It's very important that we look at data like this, and we have to be very careful because of how the Fed could affect us. Now, it's historically, when the Fed says things like this, the market would drop quite a bit, right? This time it didn't really happen. And I just wanted to announce this just to prepare you guys earlier today. Instead, the market didn't really drop that hard. It got a small drop. You can see SPY went from like the 444 zone or very close to 444 all the way down to 442. But then other than that, it just held up, got bought up quite nicely because the market so far has been plagued with some, not really plagued, but like it's been stuck with some decent earnings. The guidance is still looking quite decent, and the market believes that inflation is going to continue to drop, and the market believes it knows what the Fed is going to do anyways. The market also believes that the Fed is likely going to be cutting rates very soon, perhaps near like the very end of the year. And they don't really see this as something that's like too horrible right now going forward. They don't really see too much horrible stuff going on with the employment sector and the economy. The economy is still relatively strong. For that reason, the market's still holding up nicely. And there's also a lot of shorting that has been going on, right? Lots of shorting is also helping the market hold up. And to add on to this, the options chain is now just starting to shift because we're starting to get higher open interest on the call side for even better strikes. And we're starting to see big institutions piling in and starting to buy into this market and even FOMO into it every now and then. Now, to add on to this, when it comes to the options chain for SPY, I just wanted to inform you guys that there's a lot of open interest around this 448 strike on the call side for SPY. If it breaks above 444 and continues to hold above that, there's a chance that this could be our next target. 448 becomes more possible. Okay. Is it a promise? I can't promise anything in this market because, like I said before, it could be very, very unpredictable. But what we could do is look at the current technicals, and they could give us a very good gauge of how the market may end up moving. Because you could see on SPY as of the last like week, it's been holding above the 50 EMA almost perfectly. You can see this has been acting as support for the last, was this like 5-6 trading days. It's been continuing to hold up very nicely, and we could assume that's likely going to be the case moving forward. What that tells us is this: SPY is stuck in this range. If you look at the last 3 days, we're stuck between 444 and 441.5 ish, around there. And the next support is now the 50 EMA around this 442 level. So right now we have some solid support at 441.5 to 442. If we ever break below this, if we break below the 50, we're going to see this thing come all the way down to about 440. And if that breaks, we have like the 438 and the levels like that, just be watching for. If we continue to break above 444, right, so far we're holding up nicely, and we actually managed to touch it many times, a lot more than we touched these lower levels. That seems a lot more probable if we're going to test it again and break this level. I'm going to be watching this thing test 446, this 445 to 446 area, and then break above 446. And SPY is going to be flying to 448, which is where we have the next magnet thanks to the options chain. What do I think is more likely? I'm going to be unbiased. What I just said has been very unbiased. You guys know both the like bear and bull cases. But it seems more likely that this thing is going to try to hold and get another test of this 444 area and may even break it very, very soon, as the market is still holding up nicely and we're still making these higher highs and higher lows. Now we're entering this like sideways channel, this consolidation phase. On the hourly time frame and also on the 4-hour time frame, we are showing a little bit of weakness, just a tiny bit on the RSI and the MACD. But the thing is, price is what's more important than just what the MACD is telling us. The price right now is still very close to 444. We're still holding up very nicely. So there's no confirmation of this thing slowing down, actually. There's no confirmation whatsoever of this, SPY tanking. And in my opinion, because we don't really have any like major piece of data that could slow this thing down big time, except for like the JOLTS data, um, I don't really think it's going to crash. I don't really see this thing tanking very hard. I think the odds favor this thing trying to hold up, and it's just range bound for now. So we should assume it's going to stay in this range. But it keeps on retesting this like 444 zone of resistance. So there's a good chance it's going to test this again and potentially break it very soon. If it does break it and we get a good volume, this thing could go flying one more time. So you got to watch that carefully. I think it's going to remain range bound for the time being, stuck between 444 and then 441.5, just going back and forth and back and forth. But eventually it's going to test 444 and may even break that. I think there's a good chance it's going to break above 444. And they're going to push this thing all the way up to 448 if we truly get a bounce, if we truly break out of it, there's a good chance it's going to happen. Now for Tesla, this is an interesting one. Tesla had some signals suggesting that to make it a slowdown as soon as today. We could slow down just a little bit if you guys were watching and slow down a bit, but it ended up just rebounding and holding up very, very nicely. For that reason, Tesla is showing more strength than before, and it looks to me like it really wants to hold up now. So you're going to be watching this 285 area as your resistance, this 284 to 285 as resistance. If it breaks above this eventually, we're going to see Tesla start flying into the high 280s. But here's the thing about Tesla. We had some bullish news as well that came out from VW, and that's what helped it pump at the very end of the day, because VW is now open to adopting Tesla's superchargers. But here's the thing about Tesla, it's on a very strong uptrend still. There's still some very nice momentum. I think Tesla's going to go for that $300 level as we approach earnings. I think by July 19th, Tesla should be there. That's about 2 weeks from now, and I think there's a very good chance it's going to make its way all the way up. Now, what do I see for tomorrow? As of right now, it's still looking strong. There's no sign of Tesla tanking now. It invalidated many of these signals that Tesla's just going to like slow down a bit. And also, you have to remember the Fed was giving these comments about the economy, about a potential recession. Generally, that could slow down the markets. And so far, that did not slow down Tesla. Tesla held through it. So that's a signal that Tesla is very strong right now. We have a potential like cup and handle like formation that's developing. Depending on how you want to look at this, I'm going to be watching for $300 as we approach the next couple of weeks. It looks very, very nice to me. Could it see some consolidation before then? Sure, it still could, as Tesla is still range bound between this like 285 resistance and about 277. We're just stuck in this area. But I believe, just like SPY, it's going to eventually test the upper end and start breaking out. Another stock that's resembling this type of formation is going to be the QQQ. It is sort of range bound, but maybe not as like strongly as that of SPY. It's been stuck between this 370, 360, 368 and about 372 zone for quite a while. For the last couple of trading days, it's just been going back and forth and back and forth. I think there's a good chance, especially if we see Aapl bounce alongside Tesla and they start pushing again. Triple Q could get pushed above this resistance right here to actually break and make its way all the way up to where this previous resistance was, around this 372.8 area. If that happens and we test this 372.8 area, we could see this thing fly all the way up to 375. If it breaks that, we have even more upside to come. But I think there's a good chance it's going to happen. It's still holding up nicely. There's no true sign of weakness. If you want to turn bearish on this thing, you want to see this thing break below this range. So like 368, if that breaks, this thing is going to see more downside. For now, it has not done that. So the odds favor it holding up quite nicely and trying to continue to push, especially because of Tesla and Aapl out there. Tesla especially has a lot of upside potential now. It's still very resilient. Mullen made a very big move. This thing was up 69%. It got a very nice amount of volume. It has a lot of potential now moving forward. This could be a sign of a trend change. We could see this thing approach the 25-cent area over the next couple of trading days, as lots of people are going to be watching these like imbalances appear at like 24. Good chance it's going to happen. But for now, I'm just going to be patient on it. It looks bullish to me so far. For Nvda, we had this nice inverse head and shoulder structure, and it's actually holding up very nicely. It did cool off a little bit after the Fed's comments and also some news that came out. But with Nvda, there's a nice accumulation pattern that has been developing, and we have this important resistance around this 440 area. There's a good chance that Nvidia is going to pump for 440 over the next couple of trading days. I think it's going to attempt to do so, but we need to see it break and hold above this 430 to 433 zone of resistance. If we get above that zone, okay, the entire zone, it's going to likely push for that very high level for 440. If Nvidia breaks below our 50 EMA on the 4-hour time frame, this 418 area, that's going to be a bearish signal. For now, it's holding up quite nicely, so it really depends on the news too. I don't really know exactly what the news will tell us in the future, but what I can tell you is the odds favor this thing making its way up to that 440 area over the next couple of trading days. Hopefully by next week, because you have to remember the market closes in just like 2 days. So it could take a little longer, but I do believe it's going to make its way up there. I'm leaning more bullish on it. For Microsoft, the same thing has been going on. I think it was sandwiched again in one of these time frames last time I checked it. It did break above it. I think it may have broken above our resistance zone. So far, it's holding up quite nicely. It's actually above the 50 EMA, so it is still looking nice. But as long as it holds above this 50, it has some bullish momentum coming to it. And we could see this thing trying to get a retest of this 340 resistance. If it manages to break that, the level I was watching would be like this high up here around this like 342.5 area, and above that we have like 345. I could see that being tested, but first off, we need to hold above the 50 EMA and then try to make our way up above 340. If it breaks down, if you're a bear on this thing, you want to watch this thing break below 337. Below that comes 336.06. That's our 200 EMA. 334.75. Then after that comes 332.5. So there is also a possibility of downside, but you're going to be watching these EMAs as support just to be safe, and other support zones which are psychological and other levels. We also have this previous resistance, which is now going to become support, which happens to be aligning with our 200 EMA. So that's going to be a major support around 336. We have this confluence right over here. But I think this thing is going to try to hover above the 50 EMA and potentially try to bounce. It is looking kind of sideways and range bound, but just watch that carefully, at least for the time being. For AMD, this thing was looking a little bit weaker. It failed to make its way all the way up to finish this like imbalance fill all the way up to this like 118 area. It kind of failed to do so. And still looking weak. There's not really a true sign of this thing getting a nice bounce yet. It just continued to sell off. And we saw some momentum just translate from other stocks. So I'm going to be watching this 30 minutes 200 EMA, this 113.35 area. Could this thing base around here? I think there's going to be a chance it's going to try to hold this level, but just to be safe, if it does end up breaking below that, then it has potential to drop all the way down to support around this like 109 area. There's also this imbalance down here at like 112. I mean, there's going to be two levels. I'm sorry. There's 112 and then there's 109. Sorry about that, guys. 112 is going to come next if it does end up breaking below this 50 EMA. That is still quite a bit of downside compared to where it previously has been. I'm anticipating that it's going to come all the way down there if it does break below our 200 EMA as support. And then below that comes 109. So far, it hasn't really shown signs of holding. It could try to base here, though. There's also a chance it could try to base around this 200. We just have to see what happens in the pre-market. And then if it does bounce, you're going to be watching resistance around this 114 area. Then we have the next imbalance around this 115.8 area. And a break above that, it could make its way up closer to about 118. But for now, I mean, we just have to see if this thing could hold. It's looking weak for now, but we'll see what news comes out tomorrow when it comes to this thing holding up. For Netflix, a very beautiful bounce today. It was looking quite nice. I think Netflix is going to try to make its way up closer to about 450, especially by tomorrow. It's holding up very nice, and you can see how it reacted to this 50 EMA. I think on the 1 hour time frame, it might look a little bit better. So you can see right here, it came very close to where our 1 hour 50 EMA happens to be. And we're likely going to see this thing go for that $450 area. Again, it's still looking kind of bullish because we have a double top that formed, but it actually held up and got some good volume near the very end of the day. So there's a good chance Netflix is going to try to get a pop for that 450 one more time before it just continues to consolidate. I think the odds favor that. If it breaks down, watch 440 as support. If that breaks, there's a lot of room for downside. It could come all the way down to like 431, then potentially 430.07. So just be very careful when you watch support, but it does look quite nice so far. For the NASDAQ, this was a little bit red, but it still is holding up and just consolidating. Not a whole lot is going on with that. Same thing with SPX. It's just trading sideways and consolidating, but it's holding up nicely above support. That's one thing that's worth noting. It's still holding up. If it could break this 44.58 level, I could see this thing make its way all the way up to about 44.75. The dollar is a little bit green. That's nothing that's a surprise to me. Coinbase is still trading sideways, still stuck in this range. Watch support around 75 and resistance around 80 for the time being. It's just going back and forth and back and forth. Whichever direction it breaks in is going to determine the bigger move. For Google, you're going to be watching this as it breaks down. I mean, we have support at 121.4. Then there's 119 after that. And below that, there's even more support down here around this like 117. I apologize about the noise behind me, guys. I just want to get this video out as fast as possible. Hopefully it's not bothering you guys. But you could argue that Google's trying to flag right here. And if it tries to break above 123, I could see this thing get close to about 125. So I'm kind of in the middle so far. It's just been going back and forth and back and forth. Hasn't really given us much of a direction for the time being. But we're going to be watching, where does Google end up breaking? Does it break below our 200 EMA or does it try to hold up? If it does break this, there's going to be a lot of potential for downside. If it continues to hold these levels and tries to break this high it made right here, there's a good chance that Google will have more upside and make its way up above 125. So I'm kind of in the middle. There's not really a clear direction for now on Google. It's clearly the news that's dictating it. So just be patient with that. For Amazon, This thing is holding above the 50 EMA and the 1 hour time frame. If it breaks below that, I'm going to be watching the next support around this 129 area. If that fails, watch 128.36, then 127.5. If it breaks to the upside, you're going to be watching this resistance around 131.5, then potentially 132. For now, it's in the middle, just going back and forth. There's just no clear direction on Amazon. It's just, once again, consolidating. We will see which direction it breaks in, so watch support and resistance. Meta is looking amazing, in my opinion, because we got a very nice break right over here. Meta was consolidating. It was stuck around this 290 area. We actually broke above 290 and got this huge pump to almost $300. And you could argue it's trying to flag just like Google. That's a possibility. If it does continue to do so, it likely has more upside to make its way up to 300 plus. And there's a good chance it's going to continue going. Could it cool down first just a little bit? Get like a back test of like 290, then bounce. That's also a possibility. But the odds do favor the bulls as of right now. Now, if you want to turn bearish on this thing, it has to break below 290. So far, it's still well above that, and the trend is still looking strong. I think the odds favor this thing making its way up above 300 and potentially seeing 305 very soon. It may happen over the next couple of days, so watch support and resistance. And until then, I want to thank you all so much for listening. All right, so for the market, many of these stocks are stuck in many ranges, but we're going to be watching to see if they can get those breakouts. Many of them have lots of potential to do so, so watch it all very carefully. And until then, I thank you all so much for listening. The market to the moon as the long term is still very bright. The odds are favoring the bulls a bit more for most stocks, but always watch for confirmation and watch very, very carefully when playing in a market like this. All right. Have a great day, everyone. I'll see you guys very soon for tomorrow's video. I will be back in the pre-markets tomorrow in the morning, and I hope you all take care. The market to the moon as the long term is still incredibly bright, and peace out.